Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, Empire of Sand. Russell Sinclair ran his finger along the edge of his mahogany desk, squinting at the quarterly reports. At 53, he had built Sinclair Innovations from nothing into a billion-dollar tech security company. The office walls were adorned with patents and awards, tangible proof of his ruthlessness and genius. "Mr. Sinclair, your wife called again. She wants to know if you'll be home for dinner." Maggie, his assistant of 15 years, stood in the doorway. Russell glanced at his watch, 7:30 p.m. "Tell Veronica, I'll be home by 9. The Davidson contract can't wait." Maggie hesitated. "Sir, this is the third time this week." He knew what she meant. 15 years of loyalty had earned Maggie the right to occasionally speak out of turn. Russell sighed, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. "I know, but this contract secures our government division for the next decade." The truth was, he'd been avoiding home. 30 years of marriage to Veronica had taught him to recognize the signs. The new wardrobe, the mysterious appointments, the sudden interest in privacy. After 3 decades, he knew when his wife was lying. "Your brother called too," Maggie added. "Wants to discuss his proposal for restructuring the R&D department." Russell's jaw tightened. Theo had joined the company 20 years ago, always chasing shortcuts. "Tell him I'll review it next week." And your daughter sent the presentation for her new product line. At least Sophia was trying. Unlike Theo, she'd earned her MBA, but her impatience was concerning. At 28, she wanted to run divisions without understanding the fundamentals. Russell's phone vibrated. A message from his private investigator. "Final report ready. Meet tomorrow, 7 a.m. He'd hired Dominic Webb 3 months ago when he first suspected something was wrong. Not just with Veronica, but with his entire family. Money had a way of revealing people's true characters. Russell pulled into his driveway at 9:30 p.m. The sprawling mansion in Newport Beach gleamed under strategically placed landscape lighting, a monument to success that had become increasingly hollow. Inside, he found Veronica in their bedroom, closing her laptop quickly when he entered. "Working late again?" she asked, her tone laced with accusation despite her own deception. "The Davidson contract," he replied, studying her. At 51, Veronica was still beautiful, maintaining her figure through religious devotion to Pilates and cosmetic procedures. Her auburn hair was freshly colored, her nails perfectly manicured. "Sophia called. She's annoyed you haven't reviewed her proposal." Russell loosened his tie. "She needs to learn patience." "She's your daughter, Russell. You could show some support." "I supported her through private school, Harvard, and a cushy VP position most people work decades to earn." He hung his jacket in the walk-in closet, noting the new Louboutins and Chanel bags. "New shopping spree." "Don't start," Veronica warned, turning away. As he showered, Russell considered the meeting tomorrow. Webb had promised conclusive evidence. 3 months of surveillance on his wife, daughter, and brother. 3 months of suspicious bank transfers, mysterious meetings, and hush phone calls. Sleep evaded him as Veronica feigned slumber beside him. His mind calculated, strategized, planned. Russell Sinclair hadn't built an empire by being naive. Whatever conspiracy was unfolding around him, he would be ready. Chapter 2, Shadows and Whispers. At precisely 7 a.m., Russell sat across from Dominic Webb in a private room at the Marina Club. The former FBI agent slid a thick folder across the table. "It's all there, Mr. Sinclair. Everything you suspected and worse." Russell opened the folder, his expression unchanging as he examined the photographs, bank statements, and transcripts. "Your wife has been having an affair with Derek Holbrook for approximately 7 months. Russell's grip tightened slightly on the page. Derek Holbrook, his wife's tennis instructor, 15 years younger than Veronica. She's transferred nearly $2.3 million to various accounts he controls. Webb continued methodically. "Your brother Theo has been meeting with Walter Prentice from Nexus Technologies, your main competitor. He's been providing information about your upcoming security protocols. Russell nodded. Betrayal from Theo wasn't surprising. His younger brother had always resented living in his shadow. And my daughter? Webb hesitated. Sophia has been working with both of them. She's coordinated several meetings at her apartment where all three, your wife, brother, and Holbrook, have been present, along with Prentice and this man. He pointed to a photo of a sharp-featured man in an expensive suit. That's Martin Fletcher, Russell said quietly. Corporate attorney. They've been planning a takeover, Mr. Sinclair. From what we've gathered, the plan involves forcing you out during the next board meeting. They're collecting evidence of supposed mismanagement, while Theo has been quietly courting board members. Russell studied the documents silently, his mind racing. 5 months ago, he'd updated his will, leaving controlling interest to the company to Sophia, with substantial shares to Veronica and a smaller percentage to Theo. They couldn't know he'd changed it again just 1 month later. There's something else, Webb said, sliding another document forward. Medical records. They've been consulting with Dr. Lawrence Phillips. My physician. Yes. They've accessed your medical files multiple times. The pieces clicked into place. The sudden concern about his health from Veronica. Sophia's insistence he get a comprehensive physical. Theo's comments about succession planning. They're hoping I'm sick, Russell said flatly. Or planning to make me appear unfit to lead. Webb nodded. That seems to be the direction. Russell closed the folder. Continue monitoring them. I want daily reports. Mr. Sinclair, given what we've uncovered, I recommend taking immediate legal action. Russell smiled thinly. That won't be necessary, Mr. Webb. I have something different in mind. That evening, Russell complained of severe headaches at dinner. Veronica's concern seemed genuine, but now he recognized the calculating look behind her eyes. I've been getting dizzy spells at work too, he mentioned casually. Probably just stress. You should see Dr. Phillips, Veronica suggested quickly. I'll call him tomorrow. I already did, Russell lied. He wants to run some tests next week. Later, he overheard Veronica's hushed phone conversation from his home office, the surveillance system he'd installed capturing every word. Yes, he's finally seeing Phillips. No, he doesn't suspect anything. Just stick to the plan, Derek. Once he's declared unfit, the board will have no choice. She lowered her voice further. I've loved you for so long. Soon we won't have to hide. Russell closed the video feed, his face impassive. The game was set. Now he would change the rules. Chapter 3. The Hospital Bed. 3 weeks later, Russell lay in a private room at Newport Medical Center, his plan in motion. Dr. Harold Manning, an old friend and the only person Russell trusted with the truth, had orchestrated everything perfectly. To the hospital staff, Russell Sinclair was undergoing tests for a possible neurological condition. The symptoms, confusion, memory lapses, diminished decision-making capacity, had been carefully documented. The door opened, and Veronica entered with Sophia. His daughter's designer outfit and perfect makeup couldn't hide her anticipation. How are you feeling, Daddy? Sophia asked, squeezing his hand while checking the medical charts hanging at the foot of his bed. Confused, Russell mumbled, playing his part. They keep running tests. Dr. Phillips says they'll have results soon, Veronica said, exchanging a glance with Sophia. The company, Russell said weakly. Don't worry about that, Sophia said quickly. I've taken care of everything at the office. My bank account has more zeros than yours ever did, she added with a laugh that was meant to sound lighthearted, but couldn't hide her glee. The Tokyo deal went through. We're projecting record profits this quarter. Russell noted how she emphasized I and my already claiming ownership. The door opened again, and Theo walked in, looking uncomfortable in the hospital setting. Brother, he said stiffly, you look terrible. Thanks, Russell muttered. The company should have been mine. Theo suddenly sneered, his filter apparently weakened by the sight of his powerful brother in a hospital gown. I was there from the beginning. 20 years I've watched you take credit for my innovations. Theo, Veronica hissed. Not now. Why not? You probably won't even remember this conversation tomorrow, Theo retorted, but he fell silent under Veronica's glare. Russell closed his eyes, pretending to drift off. Through barely open lids, he watched as Veronica stepped into the hallway with a tall, handsome man, Derek Holbrook. "We're just waiting for the will reading," he heard Veronica whisper to the man, who Russell now recognized as not just her lover, but an attorney specializing in corporate takeovers. Russell maintained his facade of sleep as his family continued their conversation, believing him unconscious. "The board meeting is on Friday," Theo said quietly. "Once Phillips submits his evaluation, we move forward with the competency hearing." "And the offshore accounts?" Sophia asked. "All set up," Veronica confirmed. "Once we have control, we can structure the sale to Nexus however we want." They were planning to sell his company, his life's work, to his biggest competitor. Russell forced himself to remain still, to keep his breathing even. After they left, Dr. Manning entered. "They bought it completely," he said, checking Russell's actual vitals. "The nurses have been instructed to report your condition as deteriorating. And the tests, all fabricated as requested. Tomorrow we give them what they're expecting, a diagnosis that will support their claim that you're unfit to run the company." Russell nodded. "And the other arrangements?" "In place. The documents you wanted filed with the court were submitted this morning. Your attorney has everything else prepared." "Thank you, Harold. I know this is beyond your normal duties." Dr. Manning's expression darkened. "After what they did to my brother's company, helping you is my pleasure. Corporate vultures deserve what's coming to them." Russell smiled for the first time in weeks. "Tomorrow, then. Make it convincing." Chapter 4. Diagnosis. The next morning, Russell's hospital room filled with his family and Dr. Phillips, the physician who had betrayed patient confidentiality for money. Russell had already documented these ethics violations through Webb's investigation. "I have the test results," Dr. Phillips announced, his demeanor appropriately grave. "Mr. Sinclair, I'm afraid it's not good news." Russell feigned confusion. "What's wrong with me?" "You're showing signs of frontotemporal dementia. It explains the personality changes, decision-making difficulties, and memory problems your family has reported." Russell noted how Veronica squeezed Sophia's hand, not in distress, but triumph disguised as support. "Is there treatment?" Russell asked weakly. "We can manage symptoms, but the condition is progressive," Phillips explained, avoiding eye contact. "Given the nature of your responsibilities at Sinclair Innovations, I recommend stepping back from day-to-day operations immediately." Theo nodded solemnly. "The company needs stable leadership, Russell. For everyone's sake." "I've already spoken with Martin Fletcher," Veronica added. "He's prepared temporary power of attorney documents for you to sign." Russell closed his eyes, appearing overwhelmed. "I need time to process this." "Of course, darling," Veronica soothed, patting his hand. "We'll take care of everything." After they left to give him space, Dr. Manning entered with another physician. "Your family has just received quite a shock," the unknown doctor said, closing the door. "Russell, this is Dr. Elaine Cho from UCLA Medical Center," Manning introduced. "The specialist I mentioned." Russell sat up, dropping the act entirely. "Did they believe it?" "Completely," Dr. Manning confirmed. "Phillips delivered the diagnosis exactly as we scripted." "They're meeting with their attorney now," Dr. Cho added. "Your investigator has them under surveillance." Russell nodded. "And the real test results?" Dr. Cho opened her tablet. "Perfect health, Mr. Sinclair. Your neurological function is actually above average for your age group." "Excellent. Harold, please proceed with Phase 2. After the doctors left, Russell made a phone call. "Webb, implement the financial freeze. And send me the video feed from my home office." On his tablet, Russell watched as Veronica, Theo, Sophia, Derek, and Martin Fletcher gathered in his home office. "The diagnosis is perfect," Fletcher was saying. "With the medical documentation, the competency hearing is just a formality. The judge will grant temporary control to the three of you jointly." "And the company's sale?" Derek asked. "Once you have control, you can approve the sale to Nexus. The offer is extremely generous, $3.4 billion. We'll each clear over $800 million after taxes," Theo said gleefully. "Russell built a nice little nest egg for us." Veronica poured champagne for everyone. "To new beginnings." Russell closed the feed, his expression hardening. The trap was set, and his betrayers were walking straight into it. Chapter 5. Counter-moves. Russell checked himself out of the hospital the next morning against medical advice. His family was horrified, exactly as he'd anticipated. "Dad, you can't leave. You're sick." Sophia protested in the hospital lobby, genuine panic in her voice. The competency hearing was still 2 days away. "I'm fine," Russell insisted, maintaining his facade of confusion while purposely making erratic decisions. "I need to get back to work." "Russell, please," Veronica pleaded, exchanging worried glances with Theo. Dr. Phillips specifically said. "I don't care what he said," Russell snapped. "My company needs me." The drive to Sinclair Innovations headquarters was tense, with Veronica and Sophia following in a separate car, frantically making phone calls. When Russell walked into the executive floor, the staff's surprise was evident. He'd been absent for nearly 2 weeks, with rumors of illness circulating. "Mr. Sinclair," his assistant Maggie said, rising from her desk with wide eyes. "We weren't expecting you." "Emergency board meeting," Russell announced loudly. "My office, 30 minutes. "Russell, you can't do this," Theo hissed, catching up to him. "You're not thinking clearly." Russell turned to his brother, allowing genuine anger to show through his performance. 20 years of partnership, and this is how you repay me? By conspiring with Walter Prentice? Theo blanched. "What are you talking about?" "I know everything, Theo." He turned to Veronica and Sophia, who had just stepped off the elevator. "About all of you." For a moment, genuine fear flashed across their faces. Then Sophia recovered, adopting a concerned expression for the benefit of watching staff. "Dad, you're confused. This is what the doctor warned us about, paranoid delusions." Russell allowed himself to be led into his office, where Sophia subtly signaled to Maggie to call Dr. Phillips. Once the door closed, the pretense dropped. "What exactly do you think you know?" Veronica asked coldly. Russell sat behind his desk, savoring the moment. "Enough. This is ridiculous," Theo spat. "You're sick, Russell. You need help." "The board meeting is still happening," Russell said calmly. "But not the one you planned." Before they could respond, Maggie entered. "Sir, Dr. Phillips is on his way, and the board members are gathering in the conference room." "Thank you, Maggie. Please escort my family there now." "Russell," Veronica began. "Now," he repeated firmly. In the boardroom, 12 board members waited anxiously. Walter Prentice from Nexus Technologies sat at the far end, clearly not expecting Russell to be present. "Ladies and gentlemen," Russell began as his family took their seats, "thank you for coming on such short notice." Dr. Phillips rushed in, looking flustered. "Mr. Sinclair, you shouldn't be here. Your condition is non-existent," Russell finished. He gestured to Dr. Manning and Dr. Cho, who entered with thick folders. "May I introduce Dr. Harold Manning and Dr. Elaine Cho, neurological specialists from UCLA Medical Center." Confusion spread through the room as Russell continued. "For the past month, I've been investigating a conspiracy against me and this company. A conspiracy involving my wife, my daughter, my brother, and several others in this room." Outrage and denials erupted immediately. "Russell, this is exactly what we were worried about," Veronica said loudly. "Paranoid delusions." "Silence," Russell commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. He nodded to his assistant, who distributed folders to each board member. "The evidence is in front of you. Bank transfers, recorded conversations, surveillance photos, my brother selling company secrets to our competitor, my wife embezzling company funds for her lover, my daughter facilitating a planned hostile takeover." The board members flipped through the documents in stunned silence. "This is preposterous," Theo finally sputtered. "Is it?" Russell pressed a button, and the room's screens displayed video footage. Theo meeting with Prentice, handing over documents. Veronica transferring funds to offshore accounts. Sophia coordinating meetings between all parties. "You've been monitoring us?" Sophia gasped. "That's illegal." "Actually," Russell's personal attorney said, standing, Mr. Sinclair obtained court approval for all surveillance after presenting initial evidence of corporate espionage and fiduciary misconduct. Russell looked directly at Dr. Phillips, including evidence that my personal physician violated HIPAA laws by discussing my medical information and fabricating symptoms to support a false diagnosis. Phillips went pale. I never. Save it for your medical board hearing. Russell cut him off. Now, as for the matter at hand, Nexus Technologies' attempt to acquire this company through fraud and conspiracy. We had no knowledge of any improper actions. Prentice interjected quickly. The emails on page 23 suggest otherwise, Russell replied coldly. Now, I called this meeting not just to expose this conspiracy, but to announce several changes. He nodded to his attorney, who distributed additional documents. Effective immediately, Veronica Sinclair, Theo Sinclair, and Sophia Sinclair are removed from any positions within Sinclair Innovations, and their company shares are frozen pending criminal investigation. His family erupted in protests, but Russell continued calmly. Furthermore, I am withdrawing from active management of the company. I am appointing Caroline Walsh as CEO, effective immediately. A slender woman in her 40s stood from the middle of the table, his longtime head of operations who had risen through the ranks on merit alone. The boardroom descended into chaos as security personnel entered to escort out the conspirators. Russell watched impassively as his family was led away, their threats and pleas falling on deaf ears. This isn't over, Russell, Veronica shouted as she was escorted out. You can't prove anything. But the evidence spoke for itself, and the board members' expressions had shifted from confusion to shock to anger at how they'd been manipulated. As the room emptied, Caroline approached Russell. Are you sure about this? Russell nodded. You've earned it, Caroline. The company needs someone with integrity at the helm. And what will you do? Russell allowed himself a small smile. I'm not finished yet. Chapter 6, The Missing Piece. The competency hearing never happened. Instead, Veronica, Theo, and Sophia found themselves fighting multiple legal battles, criminal charges for conspiracy, corporate espionage, and wire fraud, civil suits from Sinclair Innovations, and divorce proceedings from Russell. 2 weeks after the board meeting, Russell sat in Webb's office reviewing new information. They're scrambling, Webb reported. Their assets are frozen. Fletcher has withdrawn as their attorney. Nexus Technologies is denying all involvement and threatening to sue them for defamation. Russell nodded. And Derek Holbrook? Disappeared 3 days ago, emptied what was left of his accounts, and vanished. Find him, Russell ordered. He's the missing piece. May I ask why? You've already destroyed their plan. The company is secure. They're facing prison time. Russell's expression darkened. Because it's not enough. That evening, Russell returned to the mansion to collect personal items. Under the divorce proceedings, Veronica was permitted to remain in the house temporarily. He found her in the living room, drinking heavily. Come to gloat, she slurred. Russell studied her, the woman he'd spent 30 years with, now a stranger. Why, Veronica? We had everything. She laughed bitterly. Everything you wanted. Your company. Your success. Your schedule. She drained her glass. Do you know how many dinners I ate alone? How many events I attended solo? Because Sinclair Innovations always came first. That company provided you with a life most people only dream of. A gilded cage is still a cage, Russell. She poured another drink with shaking hands. Derek made me feel alive again. And selling my company to my biggest competitor? Was that also about feeling alive? Veronica's expression hardened. That was business. You taught me that everything has a price. Indeed it does, Russell agreed coldly. And you're about to learn exactly how high that price can be. He turned to leave, but paused at the door. Where is he, Veronica? Who? Derek. Your lover who abandoned you the moment things got difficult. Pain flashed across her face. I don't know. He won't answer my calls. Russell smiled thinly. When you hear from him, tell him I'm looking forward to our meeting. The next day, Russell visited Sophia at her penthouse apartment, a gift for her 30th birthday that she would soon lose. You've ruined everything, she spat when she opened the door. My reputation is destroyed. My friends won't speak to me. The board of the charity foundation asked me to resign. Russell stepped inside, noting the half-packed suitcases. Running away won't help, Sophia. What choice do I have? You've turned everyone against me. You did that yourself. Russell studied his daughter, once his greatest pride. I gave you everything, Sophia. Education, opportunity, a future most people spend decades building. You gave me a job in your company where I would always be Russell Sinclair's daughter, she retorted. Never my own person, never respected for my own abilities. So you decided to steal it instead of earning it. Tears welled in her eyes. You never would have given me real control. I would have spent my life in your shadow. And now you'll spend it in my disgrace. Russell moved toward the door. The investigators will want to know where Derek Holbrook is hiding. Sophia looked confused. Why would I know? Because he was using both you and your mother, Russell said calmly. The texts between you two were quite explicit. Sophia paled. That's not. We were just. Save the denials. Webb has everything. He paused at the door. One last thing. Derek stole the emergency diamonds your mother kept in her safe. $3 million worth. You might want to check your jewelry box. As realization dawned on Sophia's face, Russell left, satisfied with planting another seed of discord. His final visit was to Theo, who had retreated to his lake house. I always knew you were ruthless, Theo said when Russell arrived. But this is beyond anything I imagined. Your own family, Russell, says the man who sold company secrets to my competitor. Theo had the decency to look ashamed. I was tired of being second best. Everything I accomplished, you took credit for. I gave you opportunities no one else would have after your early failures, Russell countered. 3 startup disasters before I brought you into my company. Your company, Theo emphasized bitterly. Always your company, and now it will never be yours. Russell studied his younger brother. Where is Derek Holbrook? Theo's expression shifted. Why do you care? You've won, Russell. We're all destroyed. Not all of you, Russell said quietly. Holbrook orchestrated this from the beginning. He approached Veronica first, then you, then Sophia. He connected you with Prentice. He brought in Fletcher. Theo looked genuinely surprised. What are you talking about? Veronica introduced him to us. Did she? Russell removed a folder from his jacket and tossed it on the table. Derek Holbrook isn't his real name. It's Paul Mercer. He specialized in corporate takeovers through family manipulation at his previous firm, Wellington Capital. Theo opened the folder, his face draining of color as he read. This can't be right. He was just Veronica's tennis instructor, a role he's played before. 3 times, to be exact, all ending with companies sold at bargain prices and families in ruins. Russell moved toward the door. Think about it, Theo. Who suggested approaching Prentice first? Who recommended Fletcher as the attorney? Who pushed the idea of declaring me mentally incompetent instead of simply voting me out? As understanding dawned on Theo's face, Russell added, he used all of you, and now he's disappeared with millions while you face the consequences. After leaving Theo's house, Russell called Webb. It's working. They're turning on each other. Any leads on Holbrook? Possibly. Facial recognition picked him up at a hotel in Santa Barbara. We're confirming now. Good. Once you have him, you know what to do. Russell ended the call, his plan entering its final phase. The separate threads of betrayal he'd planted would now weave themselves into a tapestry of mutual destruction. Chapter 7. The Architect. Derek Holbrook, or Paul Mercer, as his real identity revealed, sat at the hotel bar in Santa Barbara, celebrating his successful escape. $3 million in diamonds, another $2 million in offshore accounts, and the satisfaction of orchestrating a perfect scheme. Sure, the Sinclair takeover had fallen apart, but he'd built redundancies into his plan. He always did. His phone vibrated with yet another message from Veronica. He ignored it as he had the previous 50. The diamonds in his hotel safe were worth far more than her desperate pleas. Paul Mercer. The voice behind him sent ice through his veins. He turned slowly to find Russell Sinclair sitting at the adjacent bar stool. I prefer Derek these days, he managed, calculating escape routes. Russell signaled the bartender for a drink. I'm sure you do. It's a better fit for a tennis instructor turned con man. I don't know what you're talking about. Derek replied smoothly. "And I have nothing to say to you without my attorney present." "You don't have an attorney anymore. Fletcher dropped you along with my family." Russell accepted his whiskey. "Impressive scheme, though. You've refined it since the Hamilton family in Chicago." Derek's composure slipped momentarily. "You can't prove anything." "I already have. The question is what happens next." Russell sipped his drink. "You see, I've spent the past 3 weeks dismantling my family's lives, freezing assets, initiating criminal proceedings, destroying reputations. But they were just pawns. You're the architect. If this is some attempt to recover the diamonds, you're wasting your time," Derek said coldly. "They're long gone." Russell smiled. "I don't care about the diamonds. They serve their purpose, giving my family one more reason to hate each other." He leaned closer. "No, what I want is for you to understand something. You chose the wrong target." Before Derek could respond, Russell continued. "My associate, Mr. Webb, is currently in your hotel room, replacing your diamonds with convincing fakes. By tomorrow, the real ones will be back in my possession." "That's impossible." "The safe is a standard hotel model that takes exactly 3.7 seconds to override with the right equipment." Derek's face hardened. "What do you want?" "For you to deliver a message." Russell finished his drink. "Tell whoever hired you that their plan failed." Derek's surprise was genuine. "Hired me? Nobody hired me. This was my operation." Russell studied him carefully. A tennis instructor from nowhere suddenly targets one of the country's leading security technology firms, orchestrating a complex takeover involving multiple family members? "I don't think so." "Believe what you want," Derek shrugged. "I researched you for months. Found the weak points in your family. Your wife was the easiest, neglected, resentful, desperate for attention." Russell's expression didn't change, but his eyes darkened. "Enjoy your freedom while it lasts, Mr. Mercer. The authorities in both Illinois and California are very interested in speaking with you." As Russell stood to leave, Derek called after him. "They hated you, you know. All of them. Your wife, your daughter, your brother. They celebrated the idea of your downfall. What does that tell you about the great Russell Sinclair?" Russell paused. "That I chose my business partners better than my family." He placed a business card on the bar. "When you're ready to tell me who really sent you, call that number. It might be the only thing that keeps you out of prison." Later that night, Russell reviewed Webb's latest report in his new penthouse overlooking the Pacific. "The surveillance is in place," Webb confirmed. "Holbrook made 3 calls after you left. One to a burner phone we couldn't trace, one to a lawyer in Los Angeles, and one to a private airport in Santa Barbara. He's planning to run," Russell noted. "Make sure he succeeds in escaping the hotel, but doesn't make it to the airport. Already arranged. And the information you wanted planted." Russell nodded. "Make sure each of them receives their personalized evidence package tomorrow. Veronica gets proof of Sophia and Derek. Sophia gets evidence of Theo orchestrating everything with Derek. Theo gets documentation of Veronica being the mastermind. They'll tear each other apart," Webb observed. "That's the plan." Russell closed the file. "Update me when Holbrook is secured." After Webb left, Russell stood at the window, gazing at the ocean. The company was safe under Caroline's leadership. His fortune was protected through careful legal maneuvers completed months ago. All that remained was ensuring his betrayers destroyed each other so thoroughly that they could never threaten him again. His phone rang, a secure line few people had access to. "Yes, it's done," the voice reported. "Holbrook has been intercepted. He had the fake diamonds, as expected, and the real ones recovered along with 3 burner phones, fake passports, and $50,000 in cash. Take him to the location we discussed. I'll meet you there tomorrow." Russell ended the call, satisfaction washing over him. The final act was about to begin. Chapter 8. The Confrontation. The abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Los Angeles had once belonged to a Sinclair Innovations subsidiary before being sold off years earlier. Russell had kept it off the books through a series of shell companies, one of many contingency measures he'd established throughout his career. Derek Holbrook sat handcuffed to a metal chair in the center of a concrete room, a single bulb illuminating his bruised face. Webb's team had been necessarily rough during the extraction. "Mr. Holbrook," Russell greeted him, entering with 2 security professionals flanking him. Comfortable. This is kidnapping. Derek spat, blood trickling from his split lip. You'll go to prison for this. Russell set a briefcase on a nearby table. That would require someone to report it. And you, unfortunately, don't exist anymore. He opened the case, revealing a laptop. Paul Mercer's identity has been erased from every database. Derek Holbrook never had one to begin with. Fear flickered across Derek's face. What do you want? The truth. Who hired you? Nobody hired me, Derek insisted. I saw an opportunity with your wife and took it. Russell nodded to one of the security men, who placed a phone on the table and played a recording. It's done, Derek's voice said. The Sinclair woman is completely compromised. We move on to the brother next. Good, an electronically altered voice responded. Remember, we need all 3 family members involved before approaching Prentice. Derek's expression tightened. You've been recording my calls. For months, Russell confirmed. Now let's try again. Who hired you? When Derek remained silent, Russell sighed and opened the laptop. Perhaps this will refresh your memory. He turned the screen toward Derek, showing a live video feed of an elegant apartment. A woman moved about the kitchen, unaware of the camera. Your sister, Russell explained. Amanda Mercer, currently working as a pharmaceutical sales representative in Boston, shares custody of her 10-year-old son with her ex-husband. He switched to another feed, a school playground. Your nephew, I believe. Derek lunged forward, restrained by the handcuffs. You stay away from them. I have no interest in your family, Russell said coldly. Unlike you, I don't target innocent people. But I will have a name. The fear in Derek's eyes gave way to resignation. If I tell you, they'll kill me. If you don't tell me, you'll wish they had. Russell leaned forward. One name, and you walk away. New identity, new start, far from here. Derek slumped in the chair. Walter Prentice wasn't just looking to buy your company. The technology you're developing for the Defense Department, the autonomous security protocol, it's worth billions to certain foreign interests. Prentice is working for a foreign government. Derek shook his head. Not directly. There's a shell corporation, Meridian Consulting. They approached me 18 months ago, said they needed someone to help facilitate a corporate acquisition with complicated family dynamics. Russell processed this information. Meridian Consulting was a known front for corporate espionage, with suspected ties to several hostile intelligence services. Who's your contact? I only dealt with one person, called himself Smith. British accent, possibly fake. Mid-50s, gray hair, scar on his right hand. Russell recognized the description immediately. Sebastian Miller, a former MI6 operative turned private contractor with a reputation for operating in gray areas. And my family never suspected they were being manipulated for foreign interests? Derek laughed bitterly. They were too busy hating you to question anything. Your wife resented living in your shadow. Your daughter felt smothered by your control. Your brother believed you stole his ideas for decades. I just gave them permission to act on feelings they already had. The revelation stung more than Russell would admit. He'd known about their betrayal, but hearing the depths of their resentment confirmed his decision. You'll provide a full statement naming everyone involved, Russell instructed. In return, you'll receive a new identity and enough money to start over somewhere very, very far away. And if I refuse? Russell closed the laptop. Then Amanda and her son will receive a comprehensive file detailing your crimes across 3 states, along with the names of several people you've crossed who would be very interested in finding you. Derek stared at him for a long moment. You really are as ruthless as they said. No, Russell corrected him. I'm worse. The next morning, Russell sat in his attorney's office as his family arrived separately for what they believed was a settlement negotiation. The stunned silence when they saw each other was telling. They hadn't communicated since receiving the evidence Webb had planted. What is he doing here? Sophia demanded, glaring at Theo. I could ask the same about you. Theo shot back. Veronica simply sat as far from both as possible, her once perfect appearance now haggard. Russell's attorney cleared his throat. Thank you all for coming. Mr. Sinclair has a proposal that may interest you. Russell studied each of them before speaking. Yesterday, Derek Holbrook was arrested by federal authorities. He's provided evidence that all of you were unwitting participants in a scheme orchestrated by foreign interests to acquire Sinclair Innovations' classified defense technology. Their shock appeared genuine, though Russell knew they were more surprised by Holbrook's capture than the revelation. Given these circumstances, he continued, I'm willing to drop the civil suits against each of you under certain conditions. Hope flickered across their faces. First, you will sign complete confessions to your roles in the conspiracy, which I will hold but not file unless you violate our agreement. And the criminal charges? Theo asked cautiously. I've spoken with the prosecutor. Given Holbrook's testimony implicating you as unwitting tools, they're amenable to reduced charges resulting in probation rather than prison time. The relief in the room was palpable. What's the catch? Sophia asked suspiciously. Russell smiled thinly. Each of you will receive a one-time payment of $5 million. You will then leave California permanently. You will have no contact with each other, with me, or with anyone associated with Sinclair Innovations. You will sign comprehensive NDAs prohibiting you from discussing the company, its technology, or this agreement. Any violation results in immediate forfeiture and criminal prosecution. $5 million. Veronica repeated incredulously. After 30 years of marriage, that's all I get? Be grateful it's not prison, Russell replied coldly. Derek confirmed how eagerly you plan my downfall, how you celebrated my supposed illness. Veronica at least had the decency to look ashamed. And if we refuse, Theo challenged, then the evidence goes to trial. You face 20 years for corporate espionage, wire fraud, and conspiracy. Your reputations, already damaged, will be destroyed completely. Russell stood. The agreements are prepared. You have 30 minutes to decide. As he moved to leave the room, Sophia called after him. Dad, wait. We were wrong, but you stopped being my daughter the moment you conspired against me. Russell cut her off. This arrangement is business, nothing more. He left them to consider their options, knowing they had no real choice. Chapter 9. The Last Laugh. 6 months later, Russell stood on the observation deck of Sinclair Tower, the new headquarters of Sinclair Innovations in downtown Los Angeles. The company had not only survived the attempted takeover, but thrived under Caroline Walsh's leadership. The Defense Department contract had been secured, and stock prices had reached record highs. Beautiful view, Webb commented, joining him at the railing. Worth every penny, Russell agreed. What news? Webb handed him a tablet. Veronica has settled in Miami. Bought a condo, joined a country club. She's dating a retired investment banker. Russell swiped through the surveillance photos impassively. Sophia, New York, working under an assumed name at a small marketing firm, keeping a low profile. And Theo, Seattle, trying to launch another startup with what's left of his settlement. Russell handed back the tablet. And our other friend, Miller, was picked up by Interpol in Geneva last week. The evidence you provided was quite compelling. Meridian Consulting is being investigated by 3 different intelligence agencies. And Holbrook, living as Michael Preston in New Zealand, following the terms of his agreement to the letter. Russell nodded, satisfied. Continue monitoring all of them. Quarterly reports unless something significant changes. Of course. Webb hesitated. If I may ask, what will you do now? The company is secure. Your family is gone. The conspirators have been dealt with. Russell smiled as he gazed out at the city sprawling before him. Now, Mr. Webb, I start over. 1 year to the day after his family's betrayal, Russell sat in the first-class lounge at Los Angeles International Airport, waiting for his flight to Tokyo. Sinclair Innovations was expanding its Asian operations, and he decided to personally oversee the launch. His phone buzzed with a news alert. Walter Prentice had been sentenced to 15 years for espionage and corporate fraud. Another loose end tied neatly. A woman approached his table. Mr. Sinclair? I'm Diana Foster, your new security consultant for the Tokyo office. Russell gestured for her to sit. Webb had personally vetted everyone on his new team, ensuring no possibility of another betrayal. Are you ready for the move to Tokyo? She asked, as they reviewed security protocols. More than ready, Russell replied. A fresh start. His phone buzzed again, a A secure message from Webb, V.S., and T all received their special anniversary packages as instructed. Russell allowed himself a small smile. Each of his former family members had just received comprehensive documentation of the other's betrayals. Veronica learning how Sophia had seduced Derek. Sophia discovering Theo had planned to cut her out completely after the takeover. Theo finding proof that Veronica had suggested selling his division first after gaining control. The final twist of the knife, ensuring they would never trust each other again, never unite against him in the future. Something amusing? Diana asked. Russell tucked the phone away. Just remembering something someone once said to me. What's that? That revenge is a dish best served repeatedly. He raised his glass in a private toast. To new beginnings and old reckonings. As his flight was called, Russell Sinclair walked toward his future, leaving the ruins of those who had betrayed him smoldering in his wake. They had sought to steal his company, his legacy, and his dignity. Instead, they had lost everything while he emerged stronger than ever. In the hospital bed, they had thought him defeated. In the end, he'd had the last laugh. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Perfect Illusion. Clifford Holden had built his life on calculated risks and careful observation. At 42, he turned a struggling construction company into a multi-million-dollar development firm. Not through luck, but through reading people, spotting patterns, and trusting his instincts. Those same instincts had been whispering to him for months, though he'd pushed them aside as paranoia born from stress. The Tuesday morning started like any other. Clifford sat in his home office, reviewing blueprints for a downtown project, when his phone buzzed. His younger brother Dean's name flashed across the screen. The dentist rarely called during work hours. The text message was short, "Call me." Now, about Young. Clifford frowned. Young, his 13-year-old son, named after their grandfather, had gone for his orthodontic consultation that morning. Tanya, his wife of 15 years, had taken him, probably just discussing payment plans or scheduling. He dialed. Dean picked up before the first ring finished. "Cliff, where are you? Are you alone?" The urgency in his brother's voice sent ice through Clifford's veins. "I'm home. Tanya took Young to school after your appointment." "What's wrong?" "I need you to listen to me very carefully." Dean's voice was tight, controlled, the tone he used when delivering bad news to patients. Young's dental records, the bite patterns, the tooth formation, the jaw structure, none of it matches. Matches what? The baby teeth I saved. Remember? When Young was 6, 7 years old, I kept every tooth that fell out. You know, I'm weird about that stuff. I keep samples for all my family cases. Clifford did remember. Dean had been obsessive about it, storing them in labeled containers like some morbid collector. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying these aren't the same teeth from the same child. The genetic markers, the enamel patterns. Cliff, this isn't scientifically possible unless..." Dean trailed off. "Unless what?" Clifford's knuckles whitened around the phone. "Unless this isn't the same kid." The words hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Clifford's mind raced through possibilities, each more impossible than the last. "You're saying Young isn't my son?" "I'm saying the child in my office this morning isn't the same child whose teeth I saved 7 years ago. I'm sending you the x-rays and the comparisons." "Cliff, when was the last time you did a DNA test?" "I've never done one. Why would I?" But even as he said it, memories flickered. The way Tanya had been distant during her pregnancy. Her insistence on a specific hospital across town. Her sister Dina's odd comments at the baby shower about getting what you deserve. The email arrived. Clifford opened the attachment with shaking hands. 2 sets of dental x-rays side by side. 2 bite impressions. 2 completely different patterns. Dean had highlighted the discrepancies in red, dozens of them. The juvenile teeth showed wider spacing, different crown formations, a distinct overbite. The current X-rays showed none of these characteristics. Clifford's engineering mind, trained to spot structural flaws, immediately recognized what his heart refused to accept. These weren't variations. These were different people. He walked to the living room, where Young sat cross-legged on the carpet, controller in hand, battling through some zombie apocalypse game. The boy had Tanya's dark hair, her narrow nose. But the eyes, the jaw, the way he smiled, Clifford had always assumed those were his own features. Now he looked at the 13-year-old and saw a stranger. "Hey, buddy, can I ask you something?" Clifford kept his voice level. Young didn't look away from the screen. "Yeah. Do you remember living anywhere else when you were really little? Before this house?" The controller paused. Young's shoulders tensed, just slightly, but Clifford caught it. "No. What?" "Just wondering. Your mom ever tell you stories about when you were a baby?" "Not really." The game resumed, but the boy's movements were stiffer. "Can I go to Felipe's house after school tomorrow?" Felipe McCall, the son of Tanya's best friend Iris. Clifford had always found Iris unsettling. Too many knowing looks, too many whispered conversations with Tanya that stopped when he entered rooms. "We'll see. Go back to your game." Clifford returned to his office and locked the door. His mind shifted from shock to strategy. If Dean was right, and his brother was meticulous to a fault, then either there had been a hospital switch at birth, or something far more sinister had occurred. He opened his encrypted laptop and began searching through files. Bank statements, medical records, old photos. He'd kept everything organized, a habit from his military days before he'd built his business. The records showed Young's birth certificate from Memorial Hospital 13 years ago. But Tanya had insisted on that hospital specifically, even though it was 45 minutes away and they had a top-rated facility 10 minutes from their house. Next, he pulled up photos. The baby pictures showed an infant with a distinctive birthmark on his left shoulder blade, a small dark spot shaped like a comma. Clifford had dozens of photos of it. He'd always thought it was cute. He'd even joked about it being a Holden mark since he had a similar one. Then the photos shifted. Around age 6, the images showed Young in long-sleeved shirts, even in summer. The birthday pool party photos, Young wore a swim shirt. The beach vacation, same thing. When had that started, Clifford's jaw clenched. He stood and walked to Young's room. The boy was still gaming downstairs. He opened the closet, searching through old photo albums Tanya kept on the top shelf. He found what he was looking for, a baby book, meticulously maintained for the first 5 years, then abruptly empty. The last entry was dated November 7th, 8 years ago. Young lost his first tooth today. Dean says he's right on schedule. November 7th. Clifford remembered that week. He'd been in Texas for a major contract negotiation, gone for 6 days. When he'd returned, Tanya had seemed different, more anxious. She'd started therapy shortly after, claiming postpartum depression that had resurged. He photographed every page of the baby book with his phone, then carefully replaced it. Back in his office, he called his attorney and friend, Stanley Reed. "Stan, I need complete discretion on something. I'm talking attorney-client privilege, the works." "You've got it, Cliff. What's going on?" "I need a DNA test done. On my son, without anyone knowing. And I need you to start pulling records, hospital, birth certificates, everything from 13 years ago. Memorial Hospital specifically." Stanley was quiet for a moment. "Jesus, Cliff. You sure about this? Do it. Today. And Stan, I also need you to access financial records. Joint accounts, credit cards, everything under my wife's name for the past 15 years. I need to know if there's money I don't know about. That'll take a few days. You've got 48 hours. And Stan, call that private investigator you use for the messy divorces. What's his name?" "Greg Connor." Clifford froze. "Say that again." "Greg Connor. Top PI in the city." "What?" "Nothing. Find someone else. I want someone who has no connection to anyone in my life. Someone from out of state." After he hung up, Clifford searched the name. Greg Connor, private investigator, specialized in domestic cases, infidelity, fraud. The website showed a man in his 40s, broad-shouldered, military-cut hair. Something about the eyes seemed familiar. He cross-referenced the name with his own files. Nothing came up, but when he searched Tanya's old emails, ones he'd helped her transfer from an old account years ago, he He found 3 messages from a GC. The emails were innocuous about a charity fundraiser, but they'd been sent 14 years ago, shortly after Clifford and Tanya had married. His phone buzzed. Dean again. Did you look at the x-rays? Yeah. I need you to do something else. Do you have any photos of Young from before age 6? Anything that might show dental work or clear face shots? I've got some from his baby checkups. What? Send them to me. Every single one. And Dean, don't tell anyone we had this conversation. Not Mom. Not your wife. Nobody. Cliff, what's going on? I don't know yet. But when I figure it out, you'll be the first person I call. Clifford hung up and stared at the photo of Young on his desk. The boy was smiling, holding a trophy from his Little League championship. Clifford had been so proud that day. Now he looked at the image and saw only questions. His phone buzzed with a new message. Tanya, picking up dinner on the way home. Young wants Chinese. See you at 7. He typed back a simple thumbs up, then pulled up his security system. The cameras covered every room except the bedrooms and bathrooms, a feature he'd installed after a break-in attempt 3 years ago. He logged into the archive and began downloading files from 8 years ago, the week he'd been in Texas. It would take hours to review. But Clifford Holden had built an empire by being patient and thorough. If someone had stolen his son and replaced him with a stranger, he would find out who, and he would make them pay in ways they couldn't imagine. Chapter 2. The Thread Unravels. Clifford spent the night in his office, telling Tanya he had urgent contract revisions to complete. She'd accepted the excuse without question. She always did. That fact alone had once seemed like marital harmony. Now it felt like indifference. The security footage from 8 years ago painted a disturbing picture. Clifford had left for Texas on November 5th, early morning. The cameras showed Tanya and 5-year-old Young having breakfast, playing in the yard, the normal rhythms of domestic life. November 6th showed similar patterns. But on November 7th, everything changed. At 2:37 p.m., Tanya had carried Young to the car. The boy appeared to be sleeping or heavily sedated. She'd driven away and returned 4 hours later. The child she brought back wore the same clothes, had the same build, but something was different in the way he moved. The old Young had a habit of hopping on his left foot when excited. This child walked normally. Clifford had watched the footage 3 times, his coffee growing cold, his hands trembling with suppressed rage. His son, his real son, had left that house and never returned. The next morning, he drove to Memorial Hospital before dawn. The night shift supervisor, a weary woman named Patrice Peterson, looked up from her desk as he approached. I need to speak to someone about birth records from 13 years ago. You'll need to fill out a request form and wait for her. Clifford placed $500 bills on the counter. I need to speak to someone now. Someone who was working labor and delivery in December, 13 years ago. Patrice looked at the money, then at Clifford's face. Whatever she saw there made her pocket the bills and pick up the phone. Marianne, can you come to the front desk? There's someone who needs to talk to you about an old case. Marianne Wells arrived 10 minutes later, a gray-haired nurse with kind eyes and tired shoulders. Clifford showed her the birth certificate, watching her face carefully. I remember this one, she said slowly. December birth, late in the evening. Your wife had a difficult labor. Tell me about the baby. Healthy boy, 7 pounds 4 ounces. Distinctive birthmark on his left shoulder blade. She pointed to the notes on the certificate. We noted it specifically because it was shaped like a comma. Unusual. Clifford's chest tightened. And after the birth? What's the protocol? Baby stays with mother in recovery, or goes to the nursery if there are complications. We had a state-of-art security system, tracking bracelets, cameras everywhere. Could a baby be switched? Marianne's expression hardened. Not here. Not on my watch. Every child is electronically tagged within seconds of birth. The tags sync with the mother's. If they're separated by more than 50 feet, alarms go off. But what if someone disabled the system? Or if it was an inside job? Then we have records of it. Security logs are kept for 15 years. She studied him carefully. Why are you asking this? Clifford made a decision. He pulled out his phone and showed her the dental x-rays Dean had sent. Because the child living in my house isn't the one who was born here 13 years ago. Marianne's face went pale. That's impossible. Then help me prove it's impossible. Pull the security logs from that night. Pull everything. She hesitated, then nodded. Give me an hour. There's a coffee shop across the street. Wait there. Clifford sat in the coffee shop, his mind racing through scenarios. If the switch hadn't happened at the hospital, it had happened later. November 7th, 8 years ago. While he was away, Tanya had taken their son somewhere and brought back someone else's child. But why? And where was his real son now? His phone buzzed with an email from Stanley Reed. The subject line read, "You need to see this." The message contained a single attachment, a property deed. Tanya's name appeared as co-owner of a house in a suburb 2 hours north, purchased 9 years ago. The other owner was listed as Greg Connor. Clifford's vision tunneled. The private investigator. Tanya owned property with the private investigator his own lawyer had recommended. He called Stanley immediately. "Tell me everything about Greg Connor. Former military, like you. Army Ranger, dishonorably discharged 8 years ago for falsifying evidence in a domestic investigation. He set up shop as a PI, specializes in cases where clients need flexible ethics." Cliff, I didn't know about his connection to Tanya. I swear. What else? I've been digging into your joint accounts like you asked. There's a pattern of cash withdrawals every month for the past 8 years. $500 like clockwork. Always from Tanya's card. Always from the same ATM in that suburb where the house is. How much total? $48,000. The coffee in Clifford's stomach turned acidic. Find out who lives in that house now. I want names, photos, everything. And Stanley? Get that out-of-state investigator on this. I want surveillance on Greg Connor, on that house, on everything. I want to know every person Tanya has contacted in the last decade. Cliff, if this goes where I think it's going, it's already there. Just get me the ammunition. Marianne called him back to the hospital. She had a thick folder and a haunted expression. You were right. Someone tampered with the security system that night. There's a gap in the footage, 45 minutes, right around when your wife gave birth. The official report says it was a technical glitch. But I pulled the maintenance logs. No repairs were done. No explanation given. Who was on duty that night? 3 nurses, 2 doctors, and 2 security guards. I wrote down all the names. She handed him a list. But there's something else. Your wife didn't just deliver one baby that night. Clifford's blood froze. What? She was in labor in the West Wing. But there was another woman in labor at the same time in the East Wing. She delivered within 20 minutes of your wife. And according to the logs, that baby also had a birthmark. On his shoulder. Who was the mother? Bonnie Conway. Unmarried. No permanent address listed. She gave the baby up for adoption immediately after birth. The records show he went to a private agency, Iris Goldberg Agency. The name hit Clifford like a sledgehammer. Iris Goldberg. Iris McCall had been Iris Goldberg before she married. Tanya's best friend ran an adoption agency. The conspiracy expanded before his eyes like a malignant web. This wasn't a random switch. This was planned, coordinated, involving multiple people. But the question remained, why? He thanked Marianne and drove directly to his lawyer's office. Stanley had more documents spread across his conference table. I found something else, Stanley said. Your father's will. The inheritance clause. Clifford knew it by heart. His father, a real estate mogul, had left his fortune with specific conditions. The money would be divided among his sons, but only if they had male heirs to carry on the Holden name. Clifford's share was $20 million, held in trust, to be released when his son turned 18. If Young isn't biologically yours, Stanley continued, you don't qualify for the inheritance. The money reverts to a backup clause, split between your brothers and any legitimate grandchildren. Tanya knows about the inheritance. Everyone knows about it. It was big news when your father died 8 years ago. Stanley paused. 8 years ago, Cliff. Right when the switch happened, the pieces clicked into place. Tanya and Greg Connor had orchestrated the switch not just to deceive Clifford, but to steal $20 million. By replacing his son with another child, she could claim the inheritance when the boy turned 18, then disappear with the money. But that raised an even darker question. Where's my real son? Clifford's voice was barely above a whisper. Stanley met his eyes. That's what we need to find out. And Cliff, we need to assume the worst while hoping for the best. Clifford nodded slowly. His mind shifted from grief to calculation. He'd spent years building an empire by identifying weaknesses and exploiting them. Now he would use those same skills to destroy everyone who had taken his son. "Here's what we're going to do," he said. "We play along. Tanya thinks I suspect nothing. Greg Connor thinks he's untouchable. Iris Goldberg thinks her adoption agency is legitimate. We let them keep thinking that while we build our case. And when I have everything I need, I'm going to burn their entire world down." Stanley nodded grimly. "What do you need from me?" "Everything. Phone records, financial statements, property records, every piece of their lives documented. I want to know every lie they've told, every law they've broken. And I want to find my son, because when I bring this down, I want him back." Chapter 3. The Mask. Clifford returned home that evening to find Tanya in the kitchen, humming while she prepared dinner. She looked up with a bright smile, the same smile that had charmed him 15 years ago when they'd met at a charity fundraiser. "You're home early. I'm making your favorite pot roast." He kissed her cheek, tasting ashes. "Smells great. Where's Young?" "Upstairs doing homework." "How was your day?" "Productive." He poured himself a scotch, watching her move around the kitchen. How many lies had she told? How many times had she looked him in the eye while hiding the truth? "Actually, I've been thinking," Clifford said casually. "Young's getting older. Maybe we should start planning for his future. College funds, that sort of thing. Has Dean said anything about when we might get the inheritance paperwork sorted out?" Tanya's hand paused on the serving spoon, just for a second. "Oh, I don't know. That's 5 years away still. Plenty of time. Still, I like to get organized. Maybe we should do a full family documentation update. Medical records, dental records, DNA files, the works. Apparently, insurance companies give better rates if you have comprehensive health histories." The spoon clattered against the pot. Tanya laughed, but it sounded forced. "That seems excessive." "Probably. Just thinking out loud." He took a sip of scotch. "By the way, did I tell you about the new development project? It's out in the suburbs, about 2 hours north. Beautiful area. I might need to spend some time up there overseeing construction." "Which suburb?" Her voice was carefully neutral. "Haven't finalized the location yet. Somewhere quiet. Maybe I'll take Young with me sometime. Make it a father-son trip. He has school. Weekends, then." Clifford smiled. "I've been thinking we should spend more time together as a family. I've been working too much." That night, after Tanya fell asleep, Clifford received a text from his new investigator, a man named Luis Hopkins from Nevada. The message contained a single photo. The image showed a suburban house with a small yard. In the driveway stood Greg Connor, talking to a woman Clifford didn't recognize. But in the background, visible through a window, was a teenage boy. Dark hair, angular jaw, and even the grainy photo, Clifford could see it, the way the boy stood, one hip cocked, the same stance Clifford used when he was thinking. His son, his real son, alive. Clifford's hands shook as he typed back, "Confirm identity. I need DNA." Luis responded, "On it. Also found this." Another photo appeared. It showed Tanya meeting with Greg Connor in a parking lot, dated 6 months ago. They weren't touching, but their body language spoke volumes. Intimate, comfortable, conspiratorial. The final photo showed Iris McCall, Iris Goldberg, entering the same suburban house. They'd all been in on it. Tanya, Greg, Iris. They'd stolen his son, replaced him with a stranger, and were planning to rob him blind. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd underestimated Clifford Holden. He spent the rest of the night in his office, building a file. Every document Stanley had provided, every photo Luis had captured, every security record and financial statement. He cross-referenced phone records, finding patterns of calls between Tanya and Greg, between Iris and Tanya, between all three conspirators. The adoption agency records were particularly damning. Iris had falsified documents for dozens of adoptions over the years, creating a paper trail that would make her legitimate while hiding illegal placements. Bonnie Conway, the woman who'd given birth to the replacement child, appeared in Iris's records as having birthed 3 different children in 5 years, biologically impossible. Bonnie Conway was a professional birth mother, producing children for Iris's scheme. But the most disturbing discovery came when Clifford cross-referenced the children's faces in Iris's agency photos. Every child bore striking resemblances to wealthy fathers in the area. Every adoption happened shortly after the biological father's own children were born or around that age. Iris wasn't just switching Clifford's son. She'd been running a replacement ring for years. The question was why. The inheritance angle explained Clifford's case, but what about the others? He pulled up financial records for the other families Luis had identified. Each one showed similar patterns: cash withdrawals, property purchases, offshore accounts. They weren't just switching children. They were blackmailing the families later. Once the adopted child was established in the home, someone would contact the parents with the truth and demand payment. The parents, faced with losing the children they'd raised for years, would pay anything. It was brilliant and monstrous. Clifford's phone buzzed. "Dean, I got back the DNA results from Young's dental samples. Cliff, it's definitive. He's not your biological son. I know. I need you to do something for me. Don't react, just listen." He explained everything. The conspiracy, the switch, the real son alive in the suburbs. Dean's breathing grew ragged. "Those bastards. Cliff, we call the police right now." "We? No, not yet. If we call the police, they lawyer up, destroy evidence, and my son disappears. Maybe permanently. We play this smart. I need you to keep treating Young normally. Don't let anyone know we suspect anything." "How can you even look at that kid?" "Because he's a victim too," Clifford said quietly. "He's been used, just like my real son. Neither of them asked for this. Our fight is with the adults who orchestrated this." After the call ended, Clifford walked upstairs. Young's door was cracked open. The boy lay sleeping, his face peaceful. Clifford had loved this child for 8 years, had changed his diapers, taught him to ride a bike, celebrated his birthdays. None of that was real, but the emotions had been. He couldn't hate the child, but he could hate what had been done. Tanya slept in their bed, her face serene. How many nights had she lain next to him, knowing what she'd done? How many times had she smiled and laughed while planning his destruction? Clifford returned to his office and opened a new document. He titled it Operation Reversal. If they want to play games with identities and inheritances, he would play, but by his rules. He would expose every player, recover his son, and make sure they paid for their crimes. Not just legally, though they would face justice, but personally. He would dismantle their lives with the same precision they'd used to steal his son. He began typing out a plan, step by methodical step. By dawn, he had a complete strategy. It would take weeks to execute, and it would require playing a role he hated, the oblivious husband. But at the end of it, he would have his son back and his enemies destroyed. Clifford Holden poured himself another scotch and watched the sunrise through his office window. The game had begun, and he always won. Chapter 4, Building the Trap. 3 weeks into his investigation, Clifford had assembled a network of allies and information that would make intelligence agencies envious. Louise Hopkins had proven invaluable, quietly surveilling Greg Connor's movements and documenting every shred of the conspiracy. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Bonnie Conway. Louise had tracked her to a trailer park in a neighboring county. She was living in squalor despite having received payments from Iris's agency for years. When Louise approached her with an offer, immunity and $50,000 in exchange for testimony, she'd broken down, crying, and confessed everything. Clifford met her in a secured location, a storage unit he'd rented under a false name. Bonnie was 37, but looked 50, worn down by poverty and poor choices. She sat across from him, shaking, while Stanley Reed recorded everything. "I didn't know what they were going to do with the baby," Bonnie said, her voice hoarse. "Iris told me it was a private adoption, that a loving family wanted him. She paid me $30,000. I needed the money. I had debts, bad people after me. Tell me about the birth." Clifford kept his voice level, though rage simmered beneath. "They took me to Memorial Hospital. Iris had everything arranged. I gave birth in one wing while your wife was in another. My baby had a birthmark. Iris seemed really happy about that. As soon as he was born, she took him away. I never even held him. And then what? She gave me the money and made me sign papers saying I'd never contact the family. She said it was standard adoption procedure. Bonnie looked at her hands. But a few months later, I saw on social media, Iris posted a photo from a birthday party. My baby was there, but they were calling him Young. Your son Young. I realized what had happened. You knew and said nothing? Clifford's knuckles whitened. Iris came to see me. She said if I told anyone, I'd go to prison for fraud. She said I'd signed the papers knowingly, that I was complicit. She gave me another $10,000 to stay quiet. Bonnie wiped her eyes. I'm not proud of it, but I was scared. Tell me about the other mothers. You weren't the only one. Bonnie nodded miserably. There were at least 5 of us over the years. Iris recruited women who needed money, women who wouldn't ask questions. She matched our babies to specific families based on physical characteristics. It was all planned out. Did you ever meet Greg Connor? Once. He came to my trailer 2 years ago, asking questions about the birth. He seemed nervous, like he wanted to verify everything was still hidden. He gave me another $5,000 to keep the peace, as he called it. Clifford leaned back, processing. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to disappear for a while. Stanley will set you up in a safe location. When the time comes, you'll testify to everything you've told us. In exchange, you get immunity, the $50,000, and a clean slate. But if you contact anyone, especially Iris or Greg, the deal is off. Where's my baby now? Bonnie asked quietly. In my house, being raised as my son. And he'll stay there until I get my real son back. Then we'll figure out what's best for him. After Bonnie left, Clifford turned to Stanley. That's 3 crimes: kidnapping, fraud, and extortion. But I need more. I need evidence that directly ties Tanya to the planning stages. I've been working on that, Stanley said. I accessed her old email accounts, the ones she thinks are deleted. There's a trail from 14 years ago. She and Greg Connor were involved romantically before you met her. The relationship ended badly. When she found out about your father's inheritance clause, she reconnected with him. They hatched the plan together. Show me. The emails were damning. Tanya and Greg had discussed the switch in coded language, but the meaning was clear. They planned to wait until the child was 13, claim the inheritance at 18, then disappear together. Greg would divorce his own wife. Tanya would divorce Clifford, and they'd start a new life with $20 million. But there was an additional layer. Greg had been blackmailing Iris for years over her illegal adoption ring. He'd discovered her scheme and forced her to participate in the switch, threatening to expose her unless she cooperated. Iris had complied, but she'd also been embezzling money from her agency, preparing her own escape. It was a conspiracy of betrayals, each participant planning to double-cross the others. They're all going to turn on each other, Clifford said. We just need to apply pressure in the right places. That night, he implemented the first phase of Operation Reversal. He called a family meeting with Tanya, Young, and his own mother Elvira, the widow of the man whose inheritance had started this nightmare. Elvira Casey Holden was 73 and sharp as broken glass. She'd built her late husband's business alongside him and had no tolerance for fools. Clifford had briefed her on everything, and she'd been coldly furious. I've been thinking about the inheritance situation, Clifford announced over dinner. Given Young's age, I want to establish a trust fund now. Get everything legally organized. Tanya's fork paused. That seems premature. Not at all, Elvira interjected. In fact, I insist. My lawyers will need DNA documentation to establish bloodline verification. Standard procedure for estates this size. Young looked up from his phone. DNA test. Nothing invasive, Clifford said smoothly. Just a cheek swab. We'll all do it. Me, you, your uncles. Family medical records, too. When? Tanya's voice was strained. Next week. The lawyers are finalizing the paperwork. Tanya excused herself to the bathroom. Clifford knew she'd be texting Greg Connor, panicking. Let her. Panic made people sloppy. After dinner, Clifford found Young in his room. The boy looked nervous. Am I in trouble? Young asked. No. Why would you think that? The DNA test. I heard Mom on the phone once. She was talking about me being adopted. I wasn't supposed to hear. Clifford's chest tightened. The boy had been carrying this secret. What did you hear exactly? That I wasn't really yours. that she'd gotten me from somewhere else when I was little. Young's eyes filled with tears. Are you going to send me away? Clifford sat beside him, choosing his words carefully. I don't know the full truth yet, but whatever we find out, you're not being sent away. You've done nothing wrong. Do you understand that? Young nodded, wiping his eyes. I've always felt different, like I didn't quite fit. And sometimes Mom looks at me weird, like she's disappointed. That's on her, not you. Clifford squeezed the boy's shoulder. Whatever happens next, you're going to be protected. I promise. Later that night, Louise sent an update. Greg Connor had driven to Iris's house immediately after Tanya's call. The three conspirators had met for 2 hours. Louise had managed to plant a listening device in Greg's car, and the recording was damning. Clifford listened to the audio through earbuds, his expression stony. Tanya's voice. He wants a DNA test. He knows something. Greg, there's no way he knows. You're paranoid. Iris, if he tests the boy, everything falls apart. We need to move the timeline up. Tanya, move it up how? Young is only 13. We agreed to wait until. Greg, we don't have a choice. We grab the money now and disappear. Iris, you can access the trust documentation, right? Iris, I have connections at the law firm, but forging release papers for a minor is. Greg, figured out. We have 1 week before this all blows up. The recording continued with plans to forge documents and drain offshore accounts. They were preparing to run. Clifford had expected this. He'd forced their hand deliberately. Now came the critical part of his plan. He called Luis. I need you to make contact with my real son. Carefully. Don't scare him, but find out what he knows. And I need surveillance on all 3 targets. If any of them try to leave the city, I want to know immediately. You want me to approach the kid directly? No. Too risky. Find someone he trusts, a teacher, a coach, someone we can vet. Use them as an intermediary. I need to know if he's aware of the situation. Over the next 3 days, Luis worked his magic. The real Young. Clifford had started thinking of him as RJ for real Jr. Attended a local high school under the name Ben Hernandez. Greg Connor had enrolled him as his nephew to avoid suspicion. The boy was 15, athletic, good grades. He played baseball. Luis befriended the baseball coach, Buddy English, who confirmed that Ben was a good kid but seemed troubled. He asked a lot of questions about his past, about who his real parents were. Greg and the woman posing as Ben's aunt, Dina Brock, had told him his mother died and his father was deployed overseas. I want to meet him, Clifford said. That's risky, Stanley warned. If Greg finds out, he won't. I'll make it look like a chance encounter. Luis, set it up. Baseball field during practice. I'll be there. Chapter 5. The Son He Lost. The baseball field was dusty and sun-bleached, surrounded by chain-link fence. Clifford sat in the bleachers wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses, watching the team run drills. Luis had pointed out Ben, number 17, playing shortstop. Even from a distance, Clifford knew. The way the boy moved, fluid and confident. The way he swung the bat, putting his whole body into it. These were Clifford's movements, his mannerisms. Genetics weren't everything, but they were something. After practice, Luis approached the coach, and Clifford watched his buddy called Ben over. They talked for a moment. Then Luis gestured toward Clifford. The boy walked over cautiously. Up close, the resemblance was undeniable. Ben had Clifford's jaw, his eyes, the same slight crook in his nose from where Clifford had broken his own in a childhood fight. But the boy's expression was guarded, wary. Coach says you wanted to talk to me. Ben's voice was deeper than Young's, more confident. I'm a scout, Clifford lied, using the cover story Luis had established. Looking at talent for a summer development league. Your coach says you've got potential. I'm not sure I could do summer league. My uncle's pretty strict about schedules. Your uncle? That's Greg Connor. Ben's eyes narrowed slightly. Yeah. How do you know his name? Small town. I know a lot of people. Clifford kept his voice casual. You live with him and your aunt? Yeah. My mom died when I was little. Dad's overseas. The words were rehearsed. Hollow. That's rough. Do you remember your mom? No. I was too young. Ben shifted his weight, uncomfortable. Look, if this is about baseball. It's not, Clifford said quietly. He pulled off his sunglasses. I need to ask you something, and I need you to really think about the answer. Have you ever felt like the life you're living isn't yours? Like you're missing pieces of your past? Ben took a step back. Who are you? Someone who's been looking for his son for a long time. Someone who thinks he might have just found him. The boy's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. You felt it. The inconsistencies, the gaps in the story. The way your uncle watches you like your prisoner. The way your aunt never quite meets your eyes. Ben looked around wildly, as if checking for escape routes. You need to leave me alone. I will. But first, I need you to do something for me. Clifford pulled out a DNA testing kit. Take this. Use it. Send it to the lab. The instructions and prepaid envelope are inside. When you get the results, you'll have answers. Answers to what? To who you really are. To where you came from. And when you're ready to hear the truth, call this number. Clifford handed him a card with a burner phone number written on it. Don't tell anyone about this conversation. Not your uncle. Not your aunt. Nobody. Can you do that? Ben stared at the kit in his hands, then at Clifford. Are you crazy? I'm your father, and I've been searching for you for 3 weeks. Before that, I didn't even know you'd been taken from me. Clifford's voice cracked slightly. I know this sounds insane, but please take the test. Let science give you the truth. He walked away before Ben could respond, his heart hammering. Either the boy would trust him, or he'd run to Greg and blow the whole operation. It was a calculated risk. 3 days later, Louise confirmed that Ben had mailed the DNA sample. The results would take a week. In the meantime, Clifford moved to the next phase. He invited Iris McCall to lunch, ostensibly to discuss a charity donation to her agency. Iris accepted eagerly. She always needed money for her legitimate operations to cover the illegitimate ones. They met at an upscale restaurant. Iris wore a designer suit and fake warmth. Clifford, how wonderful to see you. Tanya said you've been working so hard. Always. I want to talk to you about your adoption services. I've been thinking about philanthropy, ways to give back. That's generous. Iris's smile was practiced. What specifically interests you? I want to ensure children end up with their rightful families. That the system works properly. He watched her closely. Too many stories of adoptions gone wrong. Children placed in homes where they don't belong. Iris's smile faltered. Our agency has a perfect track record. Does it? Clifford leaned forward. Because I've been doing research, Iris, and I've found some irregularities. Children who don't match their supposed genetic profiles. Families paying unusual amounts of money for private services. Even a few cases where biological parents were told their children died, only to discover they'd been adopted out. I don't know what you're implying. I'm implying that you've been running a criminal enterprise for over a decade. Child trafficking, falsified records, extortion. Should I go on? Iris's face drained of color. You can't prove any of that. Can't I? Clifford pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. Bank records showing payments to birth mothers. Falsified adoption certificates. Emails between you and Greg Connor discussing inventory management. That's what you call stolen children? Inventory. Iris opened the folder with shaking hands. Her expression shifted from fear to calculation. What do you want? The truth. All of it. How many children who was involved where the real children are now? And specifically, I want to know about my son. I don't know what. Yes, you do. November 7th, 8 years ago, you facilitated a switch. My biological son for Bonnie Conway's baby. Where did my son go? Iris was silent for a long moment. Finally, she whispered, Greg took him. He was supposed to place the baby with another family, someone who'd pay for a healthy infant. But he kept him instead. He and Dina raised him as their nephew. He wanted insurance. In case you ever figured it out. Insurance? If you discovered the switch, Greg could threaten to harm the boy unless you stayed quiet. He always plans 3 steps ahead. Clifford's hands clenched under the table. Did he hurt my son? Not physically, but he's controlling, manipulative. The boy doesn't know the truth. Greg tells him his real father is overseas, that his mother died. He's fed him lies for years. And you let this happen. Greg had evidence of my other placements. He blackmailed me. I had no choice. Everyone has a choice, Iris. You chose money and freedom over doing the right thing. Now you're going to make a different choice. Clifford's voice was ice. You're going to cooperate fully with my lawyer. You're going to provide testimony, documents, everything. And in exchange, I'll ensure you get a reduced sentence instead of spending the rest of your life in prison. And if I refuse, then I release everything I have to the FBI, the media, and every family you victimized. Your agency collapses, your reputation is destroyed, and you face maximum charges. Your choice. Iris looked at the folder again, then at Clifford's unyielding expression. She was a cornered animal, and she knew it. I'll cooperate, but I want in writing. Immunity for testimony. Reduced charges, not immunity. You're not walking away clean. Stanley will draft the agreement. You have 24 hours to sign it. That evening, Clifford received the call he'd been waiting for. A hesitant voice on the burner phone. This is Ben. The DNA results came back. It says there's a 99.9% match to a sample in the database. Your sample? How is that possible? Clifford closed his eyes, relief flooding through him. Because I'm your father, your real father, and I'm going to bring you home. Chapter 6. The Pieces Fall. The revelation triggered everything Clifford had been preparing. With Iris cooperating, Stanley compiled ironclad documentation of the conspiracy. Bonnie's testimony, the falsified records, the financial trails, everything pointed to a coordinated criminal enterprise. But Clifford wasn't ready to involve law enforcement yet. He needed one more piece, Tanya's full confession, and he knew exactly how to get it. He came home late one night, making sure to look exhausted and defeated. Tanya was waiting up, unusual for her. We need to talk, she said. About what? The DNA test. I know you're planning it, and I think we should discuss Young's origins. Clifford sat down heavily, playing the role of a man on the edge. You mean the fact that he's not mine? Tanya's eyes widened. How did you? I'm not an idiot, Tanya. I've known for weeks. Dean figured it out, and I've been investigating. The question is, are you going to tell me the truth, or do I have to drag it out of you? She was quiet for a moment, calculating. Then tears began flowing, practiced theatrical tears. I was going to tell you. I swear. It happened 13 years ago. I had an affair, one stupid mistake. When I got pregnant, I didn't know if the baby was yours or his. But you were so excited, and I couldn't bear to disappoint you. So I hoped. I prayed it was yours. But it wasn't. No. But by the time I realized, Young was already born. You loved him. I loved him. I couldn't take that away from you. It was a good lie. Almost convincing. If Clifford didn't know the truth, he might have believed it. Who's the father? He asked. A man I met at a conference. It was meaningless. I haven't seen him since. Really? Because I think you're lying. I think this goes much deeper than an affair. He pulled out his phone and played the audio recording from Greg's car. Tanya's voice filled the room, discussing the timeline, the inheritance, the plan to disappear. Her face went from flush to ashen. You've been working with Greg, Connor. You've been planning to steal from me for 8 years. And you didn't just pass off another man's child as mine. You orchestrated a switch. You took my son and replaced him with someone else's baby. Clifford, please. Where's my real son? I don't know. Greg handled that part. I swear, I didn't want to know the details. He said it was better that way. So you're a coward and a thief. Good to know. Clifford stood. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to write down everything, every detail of the plan, every conversation, every person involved. You're going to confess it all. Why would I do that? Because if you don't, I'll make sure you face the maximum penalty for kidnapping, fraud, and conspiracy. With good legal help, you might get 10 years. Without it, 25 to life. You wouldn't do that to the mother of your son. You're not the mother of my son. You're a criminal who stole my child. And if you ever want any possibility of leniency, you'll start talking. Now, the confession took 3 hours. Tanya detailed everything. How she'd reconnected with Greg after learning about the inheritance, how they planned to switch, how Iris had facilitated it. She described the night of the switch, drugging 5-year-old Young, taking him to a secure location where the exchange happened, bringing the replacement child home. I thought it would be easier, she said, her voice hollow. I thought if enough time passed, you'd never question it. And the plan was perfect. Wait until he's 18, claim the inheritance, split the money 3 ways. Greg and I would disappear together. Start over. Did you ever love me? Clifford asked. Tanya looked at him with something like pity. I loved what you could give me. The lifestyle, the security. But love you? No. I've loved Greg since college. This was always about getting back to him. The honesty was almost refreshing in its cruelty. And what about the boy you've raised for 8 years? Does he mean anything to you? He's not mine. He's just part of the plan. Clifford recorded every word. When she finished, he stood. Pack your things. You're leaving tonight. Where am I going? That's not my problem anymore. But if you're still here in the morning, I'm calling the police. And Tanya, if you contact Greg or Iris, the deal is off. You'll face the full weight of the law. She left within the hour, taking only a suitcase. Young, the boy who'd lived as a son, watched from the stairs, confused and scared. After Tanya was gone, Clifford sat the boy down. I know this is confusing, and I'm going to explain everything soon. But right now, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? The boy nodded slowly. Are you my real dad? No, but that doesn't mean I don't care about you. You're a victim in this too, and I'm going to make sure you're taken care of. What about my real parents? We'll find them. I promise. The next morning, Clifford met with Ben, his biological son, at a neutral location, a park where they could talk without interruption. The 15-year-old was wary but curious. I got your message, Ben said. You want me to come home? To a man I don't even know. I want you to understand what happened to you. To both of us. And then I want you to make your own decision about what comes next. Clifford explained everything. The switch, the conspiracy, the years of lies. Ben listened with growing horror and anger. Greg isn't my uncle? No. He's the man who helped steal you from me. And he's been lying to you your entire life. And the woman I thought was my aunt, Dina Brock, she's part of it too. They've been keeping you as insurance, as leverage in case I ever discovered the truth. Ben was silent for a long time. Then what happens now? Now you decide. I'm your biological father. I have rights. But you're 15 years old enough to have a voice in your own life. If you want to come home, I'll fight for custody. If you want time to process this, I'll respect that. But either way, I'm going to make sure the people who did this face justice. And what about the kid who's been living as your son? He's a victim too. I'm working on finding his biological mother. She gave him up, but maybe she'll want him back. If not, we'll find a good home for him. Ben looked at the ground. This is insane. I know, but it's the truth. And you deserve the truth. Can I think about it? Take whatever time you need. But Ben, I've been searching for you since the moment I knew you existed. And whether you come home or not, you're my son. Nothing changes that. They parted ways, and Clifford returned to his lawyer's office, where the final pieces of Operation Reversal were falling into place. Stanley had coordinated with a federal prosecutor. With Bonnie's testimony, Iris's cooperation, Tanya's confession, and the mountain of evidence, they had enough to bring charges against everyone involved. We can move forward whenever you're ready, Stanley said. Not yet. I want Greg Connor, and I want him to suffer. What do you have in mind? Clifford smiled coldly. Something poetic. Chapter 7, The Setup. Greg Connor was a careful man, but careful men had patterns. Clifford had studied those patterns obsessively. Every Tuesday, Greg met with clients at a downtown office. Every Thursday, he visited a gym. Every weekend, he checked on his properties, including the house where Ben had been living. Clifford chose Thursday. Luis had done reconnaissance. The gym had poor security cameras and blind spots in a parking garage. It was perfect for a confrontation that wouldn't be immediately documented. But Clifford wasn't planning simple violence. That would be too easy, too clean. He wanted Greg to feel the same helplessness, the same violation that Clifford had experienced. He waited in the parking garage, leaning against Greg's car. When the man appeared, fresh from a workout and toweling sweat from his face, Clifford pushed off the vehicle. We need to talk. Greg froze, recognition flashing across his face. Olden, what are you doing here? Returning the favor. You've been investigating me for years, right? Watching my family, manipulating my life. Time for a little turnabout. I don't know what you think you know. Save it. I know everything. The switch, the inheritance scheme, your blackmail operation with Iris. I know about Bonnie Conway. I know about the offshore accounts. And I know you've been raising my son as your nephew while playing house with a criminal enterprise. Greg's hand moved toward his jacket, likely where he kept a weapon. Clifford was faster. He'd been preparing for this moment. His hand shot out, gripping Greg's wrist with crushing force. Don't. I'm not here to fight you. I'm here to offer you a choice. What choice? You can run. Take whatever money you've stashed, grab Dina, and disappear. I'll give you a 24-hour head start. Or you can stay and face federal charges for kidnapping, fraud, and racketeering. Your call. Greg's eyes narrowed. Why would you offer me that? Because I want you to run. I want you to spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, knowing I'm always one step behind. I want you to live in fear the way you made my son live in fear. Clifford leaned closer. And because when you run, you abandon Dina, you lose access to any legitimate money, and you prove your guilt to everyone. You burn every bridge. And if I stay, then I bury you. I have testimony from Iris, from Bonnie, from Tanya. I have financial records, phone logs, surveillance footage. You'll spend 20 years in federal prison. You'll lose everything anyway, but at least this way, you have the illusion of choice. Greg jerked his hand away. You're bluffing. Am I? Clifford pulled out his phone and played a video. It showed Greg meeting with Iris 3 days ago, discussing how to flee before authorities were notified. Luis had captured every second. That's enough to prove conspiracy to flee prosecution. Add it to everything else, and you're done. Greg's face twisted with rage and fear. You son of a bitch. No, Greg, you're the son of a bitch. You stole my child. You manipulated an innocent boy's entire life. You destroyed families for profit. And now you're going to pay. The feds don't move that fast. I have time to. To what? Destroy evidence? Too late. It's all backed up, copies with multiple attorneys and law enforcement. Contact Dina? She's already been arrested. Iris cut a deal this morning, and part of that deal was testifying against everyone involved, including Dina. The color drained from Greg's face. You're lying. Check your phone. Dina's been calling you for the past hour. Greg pulled out his phone, saw the missed calls, and his hands started shaking. What did you do? I applied pressure. Iris flipped on Dina. Dina's rolling on you to save herself. It's like dominoes, Greg. Everyone's turning on everyone else. Except me. I'm the only one not going down. Because I'm the victim. I'll tell them you coerce confessions. That you. Go ahead. Try it. My lawyers are better than yours. My evidence is ironclad. And I have something you don't. The moral high ground. I'm a father fighting for his stolen child. You're a criminal who kidnapped an infant for profit. Who do you think the jury will believe? Greg's composure cracked entirely. I want a lawyer. Get 3. You'll need them. Clifford stepped back. Your 24 hours starts now. Run or stay, I don't care. But know this. Wherever you go, whatever you do, I'll be watching. And when you least expect it, when you think you've found safety, I'll make sure the authorities know exactly where to find you. He walked away, leaving Greg standing in the parking garage, trapped between impossible choices. Luis confirmed 2 hours later that Greg had withdrawn cash from multiple accounts and was packing his car. He was running. Perfect. Chapter 8, The Reckoning. The next 48 hours moved with surgical precision. With Greg fleeing, the federal prosecutor moved to freeze his assets and issue warrants. Dina, realizing she'd been abandoned, fully cooperated in exchange for immunity on the kidnapping charges, though she'd still face fraud and conspiracy charges with reduced sentences. Iris had already begun serving her cooperation agreement, providing documentation on 17 other cases of illegal adoptions over the past decade. Families were being notified. Children were being reunited with biological parents. It was chaos, but it was necessary chaos. Tanya, isolated and terrified, tried to contact Clifford. He ignored every call. Stanley handled communications, informing her that she'd face charges but would likely receive probation if she continued cooperating. The threat of prison kept her compliant. But the real focus was on the children, both of them. Young, the boy who'd lived as Clifford's son, had been staying with Dean and his wife temporarily. Clifford met with him to explain everything as gently as possible. Your real mother's name was Bonnie Conway. She gave you up for adoption because she thought you'd have a better life. She didn't know what Iris was planning. She's been contacted, and she wants to meet you, if you're willing. The boy, whose real name turned out to be Toby Stanton, from Bonnie's maiden name, processed this quietly. Does she want you back? She wants to know you. Whether you live with her is something you'll both decide together. But you have options, and whatever you choose, I'll make sure you're taken care of financially. You've been through hell, and none of it was your fault. Why are you being nice to me? I'm not your son. Because you're a kid who got caught in an adult's evil plan. You deserve better. And honestly, I've cared for you for 8 years. That doesn't just disappear because of DNA. Toby wiped his eyes. I'm scared. I know, but you're not alone. The meeting between Toby and Bonnie happened under supervision at a family services center. It was emotional, painful, and tentatively hopeful. Bonnie had been in counseling, had gotten clean, had used the money Clifford gave her to start rebuilding her life. She wanted to try being a mother, a real one this time. But the reunion Clifford cared about most was with Ben. His biological son had been processing everything for days. Dean had offered to mediate conversations, providing a neutral family member's perspective. And slowly, Ben had started opening up to the idea of connecting with Clifford. They met for the third time at a restaurant. Casual, public, low pressure. I've been thinking, Ben said, pushing food around his plate, about what you said, about choices. And Greg lied to me my whole life. He made me feel grateful for a home when he'd stolen me from my real home. And Dina, she just went along with it. They're not family. They're kidnappers. Yes. And you're trying to fix what they broke. You're trying to make things right. I'm trying. Ben looked up, meeting Clifford's eyes. Can I ask you something? Anything. If I come home, if I move in with you, what happens then? Do we just pretend the last 15 years didn't happen? Do we act like a normal father and son? No, Clifford said honestly. We start from scratch. We get to know each other. We build something new. It won't be normal because our situation isn't normal, but it can be good if we both work at it. And what about Toby? The other kid, he's going to figure out his own path, but he and I will stay in touch. He deserves that much. Ben was quiet for a long moment. Then, okay, I want to try. I want to come home. The word home hit Clifford like a physical blow. He nodded, not trusting his voice. 2 weeks later, the federal prosecutor held a press conference announcing indictments against Greg Connor, still at large, Iris Goldberg, Dina Brock, and Tanya Holden for their roles in a multi-year kidnapping and fraud scheme. The story exploded across national media. Clifford was contacted by dozens of outlets, but he declined all interviews except one, a brief statement. My son was stolen from me when he was 5 years old. For 8 years, I didn't know he was missing. For the past month, I've fought to bring him home. Today, I can say he's back where he belongs. To other families affected by this scheme, I promise I'll do everything I can to help you find justice and reunification. Thank you. Simple, dignified, and devastating for the conspirators. Greg Connor was caught 3 weeks later trying to cross into Mexico. He'd run out of money, run out of allies, and run out of options. Federal marshals arrested him at a border checkpoint. He was extradited back and held without bail. His trial became a media sensation. The evidence was overwhelming. Bonnie testified. Iris testified. Dina testified. Even Tanya testified. Each one desperate to save themselves, willing to burn the others. Greg was convicted on all counts: kidnapping, fraud, conspiracy, and racketeering. The judge sentenced him to 45 years in federal prison. You violated the most sacred bond, that between a parent and child, the judge said at sentencing. You treated human lives as commodities. You destroyed families for profit. There is no place in civilized society for people like you. Greg showed no remorse. Even at sentencing, he smirked, as if this was all a game he'd merely lost temporarily. Clifford watched from the gallery, Ben sitting beside him. Justice felt cold, insufficient. But it was something. Chapter 9, Reconstruction. 6 months after Greg's conviction, life began to find a new rhythm. Ben moved into Clifford's house, taking the bedroom that had once been his nursery then a guest room, now finally his again. They didn't pretend it was easy. Ben had therapy twice a week. They both did. Working through 15 years of stolen time required professional help. But there were good moments. Teaching Ben to drive, watching baseball games together, quiet dinners where they actually talked instead of performing. Dean remained a central figure, fascinated by the genetics that had exposed the conspiracy. You know, if I hadn't kept those baby teeth, none of this would have been discovered. You'd have paid out the inheritance to a stranger. And my real son would still be living a lie, Clifford added. You saved us, Dean. Toby, Clifford had promised to call him by his real name, visited once a month. He was living with Bonnie now. In a modest apartment funded by the restitution Clifford had negotiated from Iris's seized assets. The relationship between mother and son was fragile, but growing. And Toby still called Clifford sometimes just to talk. Those conversations meant more than Clifford expected. You were the only stable adult in my life for 8 years, Toby had explained. That matters. DNA doesn't erase that. Tanya received 5 years probation and community service for her cooperation. She'd lost everything. Her home, her husband, her reputation. Last Clifford heard, she was living in a different state, working a retail store under her maiden name. He felt nothing when he thought about her. Not anger, not pity, just emptiness where love had been. Iris Goldberg was serving 8 years for her role in the conspiracy. With good behavior, she'd be out in 6. But her agency was dismantled, her license revoked, and 17 families had filed civil suits against her estate. She'd die poor and disgraced. Dina Brock got 3 years for conspiracy and fraud. She'd testified against everyone, claiming she'd been coerced by Greg. Maybe it was true. Maybe it wasn't. Clifford didn't care. And Greg Connor sat in federal prison, facing decades behind bars. He'd filed multiple appeals, all rejected. He'd tried to claim entrapment, coercion, false evidence. Nothing stuck. The evidence was too strong, the witnesses too numerous. Clifford had visited him once, 3 months after sentencing. The prison was bleak, secure, designed to break spirits. Greg was brought to the visiting room in chains. He'd lost weight, gained lines around his eyes. Prison aged people quickly. Come to gloat. Greg asked. No, I came to tell you something. What? Ben calls me Dad now. Not every time, but sometimes. And every time he does, I think about you sitting here, knowing you'll never have that. You'll never watch him graduate, never see him marry, never meet your grandchildren, because you were never his family. You were his kidnapper. Greg's jaw clenched. Are you done? Almost. I also wanted to tell you that every family you victimized has been notified. 17 children reunited with biological parents. 17 conspiracies exposed. And every single one of them knows your name. You're famous, Greg. You're the monster parents warned their children about. I was trying to build a future. I was. You were stealing children. Call it whatever you want. But that's what you did. And now you'll spend the rest of your life paying for it. Clifford stood. I won't visit again. But I wanted you to see my face one more time and understand. You lost. Completely. Absolutely. And I won. He'd walked out without looking back. Now, 6 months later, Clifford stood in his backyard watching Ben practice pitching. The boy had his mechanics down, his control improving daily. He'd made the high school varsity team, a rare achievement for a sophomore. Hey, Dad, Ben called out. Can you catch for me? The word still sent a thrill through Clifford's chest. He grabbed a glove and took position behind home plate. They threw in comfortable silence, the rhythmic smack of ball hitting leather soothing. This was peace. Not forgetting, never forgetting, but moving forward. Dean joined them, bringing beers for the adults and soda for Ben. I saw Toby last week, Dean mentioned. Kid's doing well. Bonnie's got him in counseling, and he's catching up in school. Good, Clifford said. You know, for a while I thought you were crazy, Dean continued. The way you went after everyone, the elaborate traps, the psychological warfare. I thought you'd gone too far. And now I think you did exactly what needed to be done. You didn't just get revenge. You exposed a system that was victimizing children. You probably saved kids we don't even know about yet. Clifford thought about that. The investigation had expanded. Federal authorities were looking into similar schemes in other states, other agencies. The ripple effects would continue for years. I didn't do it for them, Clifford admitted. I did it for Ben, and for the 5-year-old boy who was stolen from me. Everything else was just necessary collateral. Ben jogged over, hearing his name. What about me? Just talking about how good your curveball's getting, Clifford said smoothly. It's still garbage, but I'm working on it. Ben grinned, that easy, confident smile that reminded Clifford of himself at that age. Hey, are we still going to that baseball game this weekend? Wouldn't miss it. Cool. I'm going to shower. Ben headed inside, and for a moment Clifford watched him go, still barely believing this was real. You did good, Cliff, Dean said quietly. Our father will be proud. Clifford thought about his father, about the inheritance that had started this nightmare. The money would be transferred to Ben when he turned 18, as originally intended. But Clifford had already set up educational trusts and secure accounts. The money mattered less than the principle. Ben was home. The conspirators were punished. Justice had been served. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. The trauma would echo for years. Ben still had nightmares. Clifford still felt rage when he thought about the lost time. But they were building something new. That evening, as they sat down for dinner, Ben, Clifford, and Dean's family, Clifford looked around the table and felt something he hadn't felt in months. Hope.